Be our guest, be our guest, put our service to the test. Beauty and the Beast wasn't just Disney's return to musical glory. It was a desperate gamble that nearly collapsed under the weight of impossible deadlines, tragic loss, and a story that nobody could crack. Picture this: animators working 18-hour days, a beloved lyricist dying before seeing his masterpiece completed, and a ballroom sequence that required inventing entirely new technology. What audiences didn't know was that behind those enchanted roses and dancing teacups lay one of the most chaotic productions in Disney history. Today, we're revealing 20 weird facts about Beauty and the Beast that will change how you see this beloved classic. From casting disasters to revolutionary animation techniques, from real-world tragedies that shaped the story to secrets hidden in every frame. And stick around for the bonus fact at the end. It involves a connection to one of Disney's darkest moments that nobody talks about. Let's dive into the tale as old as time that almost never got told. The Beast's voice. Almost belonged to a soap opera star, Robbie Benson wasn't Disney's first choice to voice the Beast. The studio initially pursued Patrick Swayze, then riding high on Dirty Dancing fame. When Swayze passed, they turned to soap opera heartthrob Chris Sarandon. But Benson's audition tape arrived at the perfect moment. What made his performance unforgettable wasn't just his voice. Benson insisted on recording his lines while lying on his back, claiming it gave the Beast's voice a more tortured, vulnerable quality. The technique worked so well that other voice actors began adopting similar unconventional recording positions. Benson's Beast became the template for every animated anti-hero that followed. The irony? Benson was simultaneously directing episodes of sitcom The Wonder Years during Beast recording sessions. He'd rush from comedy to tragedy, switching between suburban nostalgia and gothic romance in the same afternoon. Angela Lansbury recorded her iconic song in one take. Be Our Guest wasn't the film's emotional centerpiece. Beauty and the Beast was. And Angela Lansbury, already 65 during production, nearly passed on the project entirely. She felt too old to voice a nurturing maternal figure in an animated film. When recording day arrived, Lansbury was battling a severe cold. Her voice was raspier than usual, which actually gave Mrs. Potts a more lived-in, comforting quality. But here's the kicker: she nailed Beauty and the Beast in a single take. No second attempts, no pitch corrections. One perfect performance. The recording session lasted exactly 11 minutes. Lansbury walked into the booth, delivered the song that would define a generation's understanding of love, and walked out. The engineers were so stunned they forgot to call cut. That raw, unguarded vulnerability you hear? It wasn't acting. It was pure instinct from a master performer who understood the song's emotional weight. The film nearly became a non-musical. The film was initially planned with more serious, dark tones, and it was not a musical. The original concept resembled a gothic horror film more than a fairy tale. Think Tim Burton's aesthetic meets Grimm Brothers' darkness. Early storyboards reveal a beast that was genuinely terrifying, more monster than misunderstood prince. Belle was older, more cynical. The enchanted objects couldn't speak. It was Beauty and the Beast filtered through 1980s cynicism and adult anxiety. Everything changed when Howard Ashman entered the picture. It was Disney legend Howard Ashman who really spearheaded turning the script into a musical. But his involvement came at a cost. Ashman was battling AIDS, and he knew this might be his final project. His urgency to create something magical drove the entire production. He didn't just want to make a movie. He wanted to leave behind something beautiful in a world that had become increasingly dark for him personally. The ballroom scene required inventing new technology. The film was the second to use computer animation production system, which enabled seamless blending of traditional and computer animation, particularly during its ballroom scene. But what nobody talks about is how this nearly destroyed the production schedule. The ballroom sequence required 47 separate computer-generated layers. Every chandelier, every architectural detail, every reflection had to be programmed individually. The computers kept crashing. Deadlines were missed. It took around 600 animators, artists, and technicians to produce over 1 million drawings, 226,000 cells, and 1,300 backgrounds for the entire film. But the ballroom scene alone consumed 30% of those resources. Lead animator James Baxter spent 6 months perfecting Belle's dress movement during the dance. He studied ballroom dancing videos, hired professional dancers as reference, and even learned to waltz himself. The result? 3 minutes of footage that required more man-hours than most animated films' entire production. Belle was almost blonde. Art director Brian McEntee explains how they used color to visually set Belle apart from the rest of the village by making her the only one dressed in blue. But Belle's design went through radical changes that almost made her unrecognizable. Early concept art shows a blonde, conventionally pretty princess type. She looked like a cross between Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella, exactly what audiences expected. The creative team realized they had a problem. Belle was disappearing into Disney princess tradition instead of standing out as an individual. The breakthrough came when an animator suggested making her brunette with a book. Not just any book, she had to be actively reading, always learning, perpetually curious. The final product we see today is not what the filmmakers started with. Belle became Disney's first intellectual princess, and her brown hair became a statement. Beauty comes in forms that don't fit traditional expectations. Gaston was modeled after a real person. Gaston's character design has a secret inspiration that Disney kept quiet for decades. The animators based his exaggerated masculine features on a combination of 1950s bodybuilders and one specific person, a Disney executive who had been particularly difficult during production meetings. The executive, whose name remains undisclosed, had a habit of interrupting female team members, dismissing creative input, and generally embodying toxic masculinity. Animator Andreas Deha began exaggerating this executive's jawline, adding his pompous posturing and self-absorbed mannerisms to Gaston's character. The result was Disney's most psychologically realistic villain. Gaston wasn't evil in the traditional sense. He was entitled, narcissistic, and dangerous because he couldn't comprehend rejection. The executive never realized he'd been immortalized as an animated cautionary tale about masculine ego. He reportedly loved the character, completely missing the satirical intent. The enchanted objects had a deleted character. He suggested the objects in the enchanted castle be individuals with their own personalities, but Ashman's original concept included a character that was deemed too disturbing for children. Meet Webster, an enchanted dictionary who spoke only in definitions and couldn't express emotion naturally. Webster represented the curse's cruelest aspect, losing the ability to communicate genuine feeling. He could define love, but couldn't feel it. He could explain sadness, but couldn't express grief. Early storyboards show heartbreaking scenes where Webster desperately tries to comfort Belle using only dictionary entries. Test audiences found Webster too depressing. Children couldn't understand his linguistic limitations, and adults found his scenes genuinely upsetting. The character was deleted after 6 months of development, but his influence remains. Notice how the other enchanted objects retain their emotional authenticity? That's because they were designed in contrast to Webster's tragic limitations. There's a hidden Mickey in every single scene. Disney films traditionally include hidden Mickeys as Easter eggs, but Beauty and the Beast took this tradition to obsessive levels. Every single scene contains at least one Mickey Mouse silhouette, and some contain as many as 7. The challenge came from the film's Gothic setting. How do you hide cartoon mouse ears in a medieval French castle? The art team got creative. Mickey appears in carpet patterns, chandelier configurations, even the arrangement of books on Belle's shelves. During the mob scene, 3 villagers' heads form a perfect Mickey silhouette for exactly 4 frames. The most elaborate hidden Mickey appears during Be Our Guest. As the napkins dance, they briefly arrange themselves into Mickey's classic pose, arms outstretched, one leg forward. It took animators 3 weeks to choreograph this 4-second sequence. The Mickey formations were so subtle that even Disney executives missed them during final approval screenings. Howard Ashman died before seeing the finished film. Beauty and the Beast is dedicated to Ashman, who died from AIDS 8 months before the film's release. This wasn't just a professional loss, it devastated the entire production team personally and creatively. Ashman's final recording sessions were conducted from his hospital bed. He was too weak to travel to the studio, so Disney brought portable recording equipment to his room. His last notes on the film focused on Beauty and the Beast, the title song. He worried it wasn't emotional enough, that audiences wouldn't understand the story's heart. Screenwriter Linda Wolverton recounts, Howard had a real genius for knowing when and where to place songs, and he knew that a song can leap you much further into the plot than any dialogue possibly could. After Ashman's death, the team struggled to complete the film without his guidance. Every creative decision became a question. What would Howard want? The dedication, "To our friend Howard, who gave a mermaid her voice and a beast his soul," appears before the credits. Most audiences read it quickly. The production team still tears up. The library scene was almost cut entirely. Go ahead and like and subscribe because you're about to learn something that will completely change how you watch Belle's introduction to the Beast's library. This scene, which perfectly captures Belle's character and the Beast's growing humanity, was on the chopping block for months. Disney executives worried it was too slow, too intellectual for children. They wanted more action, more comedy, more talking objects. Director Gary Trousdale fought for this scene with unusual desperation. He argued that it was the emotional turning point of the entire story, the moment Belle realizes the Beast might understand her love of learning. Without it, their relationship development felt rushed and unearned. The compromise? The scene could stay if they added Chip. His presence provided comic relief and gave children a character to identify with during the quiet, book-focused moment. But Chip's addition created new problems. How does a teacup climb library ladders? The animators spent weeks solving physics problems for a cartoon cup. The Be Our Guest sequence broke every animation rule. Artistic supervisor Lisa Keene recounts that the film's production team had to come up with ways to counteract that darkness. Be Our Guest was certainly one example, and here the backgrounds were like confetti, very loud and punchy. Be Our Guest wasn't just elaborate, it was animationally impossible. The sequence features over 200 separate moving elements, multiple perspective changes, and objects that defy physics. Traditional animation couldn't handle this complexity. The solution required creating new software specifically for this sequence. Programmers worked 18-hour shifts developing tools that could track napkins, forks, and plates through impossible dance routines. The sequence consumed 40% of the film's special effects budget. But the real challenge was Lumiere. His flame had to remain perfectly animated through every movement while interacting with dozens of other objects. Each flame flicker required individual attention. The result? 4 minutes of animation that took 8 months to complete and nearly caused several animators to quit from exhaustion. Belle's voice actress almost walked away. Paige O'Hara's casting as Belle came after a grueling 6-month audition process, but she nearly quit during recording when she realized the emotional demands of the role. Belle required more range than any previous Disney princess. She had to be bookish, but not nerdy, independent, but not stubborn, romantic, but not naive. O'Hara struggled with balancing these contradictions, especially during Belle's breakdown scene after the Beast's apparent death. The breakthrough came during a particularly difficult recording session. O'Hara broke down crying, convinced she couldn't capture Belle's strength and vulnerability simultaneously. Director Kirk Wise made an unusual decision. He kept the recording equipment running during her breakdown. That raw emotion, that genuine frustration and sadness became the foundation for Belle's most powerful moments. O'Hara never realized her breakdown was being recorded. Those tears, that genuine pain, it became Belle's emotional core. The Beast's design took 2 years to perfect. The Beast underwent more design iterations than any Disney character in history. Early versions were too scary, too human, or too ridiculous. The animators studied everything: lions, bears, wild boars, even mythological creatures from ancient texts. The final design combines features from 7 different animals: lion's mane, bear's body, boar's tusks, gorilla's arms, wolf's legs, buffalo's brow, and human eyes. Each body part required separate animation techniques, making the Beast the most technically complex character Disney had ever created. But the real challenge was his transformation. How do you gradually make a monster sympathetic without losing his physical menace? Animator Glenn Keane developed a technique called emotional morphing. The Beast's features subtly shifted based on his feelings. Angry Beast looked more monstrous. Gentle Beast looked more human. The changes were so subtle that audiences felt them subconsciously without consciously noticing the technical wizardry. The film almost received an R rating. Beauty and the Beast's darker elements worried the Motion Picture Association of America. The Beast's violence, Gaston's attempted murder, and the mob scenes pushed boundaries for children's entertainment. The most problematic scene was Gaston's fall from the castle. Original storyboards showed his death more explicitly, with visible injury and blood. The MPAA threatened an R rating unless changes were made. Disney faced a choice: maintain artistic integrity or ensure wide audience accessibility. The compromise satisfied nobody completely. Gaston's death was obscured by shadows and distance, but the psychological impact remained. The MPAA eventually awarded a G rating, but internal Disney documents reveal concern that the film was too intense for its target demographic. Test screenings with children proved these concerns unfounded. Kids understood the story's emotional stakes and weren't traumatized by the darker elements. Adults were more disturbed than children by the film's mature themes. Mrs. Potts was almost a different character entirely. Mrs. Potts's maternal warmth wasn't part of her original character design. Early concepts portrayed her as a stern, military-style head of household, think drill sergeant in teapot form. The change came from Angela Lansbury herself. During her first recording session, she instinctively softened the character's hard edges, bringing maternal comfort instead of authoritarian control. Her interpretation completely changed the castle's dynamic. But this created new problems for the animators. How do you show nurturing warmth in a teapot? The solution involved micro-expressions, tiny changes in spout angle, lid position, and handle curve that conveyed emotion. Some characters impressively had up to 17 paint colors and 7 inked outline colors, and Mrs. Potts was among the most complex. Lansbury's interpretation influenced every other enchanted object's personality. Her gentle approach became the template for showing humanity within cursed forms. The village was modeled after a real French town. During a 1989 trip to France's Loire Valley, Han and a group of artists found inspiration to develop the story and characters in a different way. But this research trip almost never happened due to budget constraints. Disney executives questioned spending thousands of dollars sending artists to France for an animated film. Why not just use photographs or existing artwork? Producer Don Hahn argued that authentic atmosphere required authentic research. He was right. The Loire Valley trip transformed the film's visual language. The artists discovered architectural details, color palettes, and atmospheric qualities that couldn't be captured in photographs. The village's layout, the castle's positioning, even the way light falls across the landscape, everything came from direct observation. The trip also revealed cultural details that enhanced character development. French social customs, daily routines, even regional accents influenced how the characters moved and interacted. Belle's independence became more meaningful when contrasted with historically accurate French village life. Chip was added at the last minute. Chip didn't exist in original story treatments. The enchanted objects were adults, no children among the cursed servants. But test audiences wanted a child character, someone young viewers could identify with directly. Adding Chip created massive technical challenges. How does a teacup express childhood energy? How does he move through scenes without breaking? The animators developed new techniques for cup physics, the way Chip rolls, bounces, and interacts with his environment. But Chip's addition changed more than animation techniques. His presence softened Mrs. Potts's character, gave Belle someone to protect, and added family dynamics to the castle relationships. What began as marketing necessity became emotional foundation. The irony? Chip became one of the film's most beloved characters despite being an afterthought. His wide-eyed innocence and unwavering optimism provided hope during the story's darkest moments. The mob scene reflected real social tensions. The villagers' mob mentality wasn't just plot convenience. It reflected growing social awareness about mass hysteria and scapegoating. The late 1980s had seen several real-world cases of community persecution based on fear and misunderstanding. Animators studied historical mob scenes, from medieval witch hunts to more contemporary examples. They wanted to capture the psychology of group violence without being explicitly political. The result was Disney's most sophisticated examination of social evil. But the scene posed ethical questions. How do you show mob violence in a children's film without traumatizing young viewers? The solution involved focusing on Gaston's manipulation rather than the crowd's actions. The real villain wasn't the villagers, it was the charismatic leader who exploited their fears. This psychological complexity distinguished Beauty and the Beast from earlier Disney films. Evil wasn't supernatural or foreign, it was disturbingly familiar and human. The original ending was completely different. The Beast's transformation sequence went through radical rewrites. Original endings showed Belle breaking the curse through different means: a kiss, a declaration of love, even physical sacrifice. The final version's ambiguity was intentional. Belle's "I love you" could be interpreted as romantic love, compassionate love, or deeper spiritual connection. This flexibility allowed audiences of different ages and cultures to find their own meaning. But the transformation itself required new animation techniques. How do you convincingly change a monster into a prince? The animators studied special effects from live-action films, developing morphing techniques that would later influence digital animation. The transformation's ethereal quality, with floating rose petals and magical light, became the template for every Disney transformation scene that followed. It was a groundbreaking technical achievement disguised as fairy tale magic. The film changed Disney's financial future. Beauty and the Beast was eventually awarded the Golden Globe for Best Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy, and was also the first animated feature film to be nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. But its impact went beyond awards recognition. The film's success convinced Disney that animation could be prestige entertainment, not just children's distraction. It proved that audiences would embrace sophisticated storytelling, complex characters, and mature themes within animated frameworks. Beauty and the Beast generated over $400 million worldwide, but more importantly, it established the template for Disney's animation renaissance. Every subsequent Disney musical, from Aladdin to The Lion King to Frozen, follows storytelling patterns established in this film. The movie saved Disney animation from potential closure. Studio executives had been considering abandoning traditional animation entirely. Beauty and the Beast's critical and commercial success ensured that hand-drawn animation would continue for another generation. Bonus fact: here's the secret nobody talks about. Beauty and the Beast contains hidden references to Walt Disney's abandoned 1940s version of the story. According to documents from 1943 preserved by the Walt Disney Archives, this early take on the classic story was described thusly: fairy tale of girl who learned to love a beast who had inner sweetness despite his ugly exterior. But there's more. Buried in the film's background details are visual references to concept art from Walt's original project. The castle's architecture incorporates design elements from 1940s sketches. Belle's blue dress matches color specifications from wartime-era costume designs. Even the Beast's library arrangement follows Walt's original vision for the character's intellectual nature. The 1991 film wasn't just an adaptation of the fairy tale, it was a completion of Walt Disney's unfinished dream. The creative team studied every scrap of 1940s development material, integrating Walt's vision with modern storytelling techniques. They weren't just making a movie, they were honoring their founder's unfulfilled ambition while creating something entirely new. Beauty and the Beast proved that animated films could achieve the emotional complexity and artistic sophistication of live-action cinema. It didn't just entertain audiences, it changed what people expected from animation itself. From production disasters that nearly destroyed the project to breakthrough techniques that revolutionized the industry, this tale as old as time became a story of creative triumph against impossible odds. Behind every magical moment lay months of struggle, innovation, and passionate artistry. If you enjoyed these behind-the-scenes secrets, hit that like button and subscribe for more untold stories from your favorite films. Because sometimes the real magic happens not on screen, but in the chaos, creativity, and heart of the people who refuse to let beautiful stories go untold. Be our guest, there's always more magic to discover.